Hi there, Bill Hitchcock. Welcome to the program. We got another great one for you. What I just got done doing, I got off of a Zoom call just a few minutes ago with Jesse Bissett. He's with the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission. And what we talk about is something that's going to be mandatory this year for both licensed recreational fishermen and licensed commercial fishermen, and that is the reporting of 5 different species of fish, of red drum, striped bass, speckled trout, gray trout, and flounder. Yes, that pertains to commercial fishermen when they're recreationally fishing. That becomes mandatory this year, 2025, to report. Now, what does that mean? It says in the bill, it says flounder. Is that all 3 species of flounders? Also, it's licensed fishermen. What if I'm fishing off of a pier or a charter boat that has a blanket license? Am I responsible as the fisherman to report that, or is the pier or the charter boat captain? We asked Jesse all of these questions and a whole lot more. You're going to love it. It's a great segment. Let's jump right into it. All right, Jesse. I don't know. It's funny how fishermen love and hate at the same time when we bring up a topic. One of the major problems that I've heard over the years, and one of the major complaints I've heard over the years from fishermen, is they don't trust the surveys. Where do they get that information? I've never been surveyed. Well, now we have an answer, I think, to that, at least with 5 different species of fish: the red drum, flounder, speckled trout, gray trout, and striped bass. So this year, December of this year, you're going to have to, me as a recreational fisherman and as a commercial fisherman, when recreational fishing, have to report it. How does that system work?
So currently what we have is an online web form that people will go to report their harvest. Basically, if you're fishing from a boat, when you get done with your fishing trip and you get back to the dock, you'll go to that web form and fill out the questions that are in that web form and submit it to the divisions. It's pretty simple. This is kind of our initial phase of mandatory harvest reporting. It's basically just asking you for if you have a fishing license, your license number, your name, the county that you reside in and your zip code, the water body that you harvested any of the 5 fish in, and the 5 fish that you harvested. If you harvested any of those 5 fish, the number of those that you harvested.
A couple of things. Number one, I don't say I caught speckled trout. I'm going to act like a speckled trout fisherman here, which I don't care how many times I've gone speckled trout fishing. I'm not a speckled trout fisherman, but I don't have to go, I was at this exact spot, do I, in my reporting?
No, sir. No, we're not looking for specific locations. It's basically just the major water body that you are fishing in. And we actually have on the Division of Marine Fisheries website on the mandatory harvest reporting page a interactive map that actually has a color coded like water body. So you can actually zoom in to exactly where you were fishing, see what color that water body is, and then you'll know exactly what to report. It's basically the Neuse River, the Pamlico River, the Pungo River, Pamlico Sound, the large water bodies like that. So we're not looking for any specific locations, any very like GPS coordinates or anything like that.
So it's not like off the third dock down Spooner's Creek, nothing like. And you made mention you can do it online. Can I do it on my telephone?
You can do it on a smartphone, yes, sir. Basically, anything that has the ability to access the internet has the ability to submit this web form. It's just a web form that you go into in your browser. Just if you can do it on a computer, you can do it on a tablet, you can do it on your phone. It's very easily accessible.
How quickly do I need to report? Is it each time I catch a fish, or when I'm done fishing for the day? Do I have 24 hours, 48 hours? What's the time span or window to report?
So you don't have to report as soon as you catch the fish. It's when you end your fishing trip. So, like I said before, if you're fishing from a boat, when you get back to the dock, but before you leave the boat ramp, like before you pull out of the boat ramp, you would have to report your harvest. If you're fishing from the shore, like if you were surf fishing or something, it's basically when you have your gear stowed, when you're not actively fishing anymore and your gear is stowed away, you would have to report then.
So it's basically right when you end your fishing trip.
Yes, sir.
It's not the next day. And I wish I could remember there's a technical term for it in surveying that they discovered over the years, that the more time goes by, the less the memory is working right. You either add or subtract. So this is going to help deviate from, oh, I didn't catch 5 fish, I caught 6.
Yeah, sir. That's the idea. I think the term you're thinking of is called recall bias, and
Yeah,
basically, the
that's it.
further away you get from the activity, the less likely you are to remember accurately. It also helps with enforcement purposes, having it reporting right away like that, which is good. And one of the things that we've heard from people is not everybody has a smartphone and not everybody has the ability to report right at the dock like that. So we have developed a paper reporting form that people can get from the Division of Marine Fisheries from any office. And with that, they can take it fishing with them and just record what they harvested on the paper report form. And then they have midnight to midnight the day following their fishing trip to actually report that on the web form. And that paper copy is basically just a something that if they were stopped by Marine Patrol as they were leaving the boat ramp or something, they could show them, hey, this is my paper report card that I'm planning on submitting before midnight the following day.
Well, you brought up Marine Patrol. What is no law is worth doodah if there's not enforcement? What happens if I went out, caught a couple of flounders, and I didn't report it?
So currently, this is all written in the legislation itself, and I probably should have started with a little bit of this uh, kind of background. So mandatory harvest reporting is actually something that is in legislation. It's not something that the Division of Marine Fisheries initiated or really pushed for or anything like that. This was something that was passed in the General Assembly of North Carolina, and uh, that legislation, it's Session Law 2023-137, actually lays out the enforcement mechanism and the penalties for not complying. And starting December 1st, 2025 is when the actual requirement goes into effect. If you don't report during the first year, you basically just get a verbal warning. Marine Patrol says, hey, you're supposed to be reporting. Make sure you do it next time. It's really, this is kind of the education phase of mandatory harvest reporting. Beginning December 1st, 2026, you'll get a written warning if you don't report. And that's kind of just a little bit more of a still an education phase, but like, hey, this is getting serious. You really need to do this. And then December 1st, 2027 is when the actual penalty phase of the mandatory harvest reporting requirements go into effect. And with that, and this is all again spelled out in the legislation, you'll get a $35 fine. And it's a lot of people, like when we tell them a $35 fine, when they hear that, they say, well, that's not that much. That's not really enough to make me want to do it. But it's important to note that it's actually an infraction that can be counted towards basically license suspensions. So if you're found as a repeat violator, there is the potential for you to lose your fishing license.
Although I've got the piece of legislation right in front of me, and for those of you who are really picky, it's House Bill 600.
Hmm.
As Jesse just mentioned, session law. Here I am trying to read it without my glasses. 2023-137. But so the director, it's my understanding, the director does have the authority or the ability to either not cause a fee or to cause some other form of punishment or to expand upon that punishment. Is that correct?
I'm actually not certain about that. If the director has the ability to change what that fee would be, she does have the ability, like I was saying before, if for repeat violators to revoke their licenses, their privileges.
Well, one of the things that I think guys are excited about, because another complaint I heard from the recreational side of the fence is that about commercial fishermen. And when it comes to recreational fishing, it has been up to this point in time since they have a commercial fishing license that in theory, they could keep up to their commercial quota if they were just recreational fishing. That changes with this law. Can you expand upon that?
So with this law, it doesn't prevent them from still using their commercial fishing license to go out and harvest fish for personal consumption. That's still possible. But what it does is it requires any commercial fisherman who's engaged in a commercial fishing operation to report any harvest at all of any. The legislation says any fish, but in this context, any fish actually means anything at all. So finfish, shrimp, crustaceans like oysters. All of that has to be reported to the Division of Marine Fisheries starting December 1st, 2025.
And again, this is red drum. It says flounder. It doesn't specify. So does this include all three different species that we would typically catch here in North Carolina?
Yes, sir. Yeah, because the legislation just says flounder, basically if you catch a summer flounder, a Gulf flounder, or a southern flounder, you have to report that to the division.
And this all rolls out in the end of this year in December. In 2026 you're going to get a written warning. In 2027 is when that's it. It's you're getting fined. It'd be a $35 fine, but if you repeat this, you could get even worse. My question has always been that we're still going to have to apply surveying, because these now we're going to be reporting five fish that we caught, not caught and or kept, excuse me, not caught and released. So how does surveying come into this?
So you kind of started out this talking a little bit about MRIP and surveys, and really something that the division really wants to stress to the public is that mandatory harvest reporting will not replace the Marine Recreational Information Program or the other creel surveys that the state does, like our CSMA striped bass survey. It, like you said, it doesn't collect discard information, the number of fish that recreational anglers threw back, and for a lot of our fisheries, that's a substantial part of the removals. So we'll still have to do MRIP, and it really, with mandatory harvest reporting, with any new kind of reporting program like this, you it's not an apples to apples comparison. So even if we started December 1st, 2025 of this year, and every single person reported exactly like they were supposed to when they harvested any of those five fish, we still wouldn't be able to immediately take that data and use it to inform our management decisions, or to solely inform our management decisions. We would still need some sort of calibration period to be able to actually compare the information that we got from mandatory harvest reporting with the estimates from the MRIP program.
You said calibration period. What are we talking about? Let's say in 2026, you got all the results from that year. We're now in 2027. How long is it going to take to be able to do something with that information and make it public?
We actually don't know that yet. It's a lot of that kind of is up to how well people report, how if we actually see that people are reporting accurately like we would like them to. Uh, we could see it just being a few years before we actually get some real usable data from it. If people aren't compliant, and we have don't have much confidence in it, it likely will be longer. And really, one of the things that, like, kind of the way the division is looking at mandatory harvest reporting is, we're, at least in this initial phase, we're not really viewing this as, hey, this is something that can fix recreational data collection. It's not the thing that is gonna immediately take the kind of the lack of confidence that the public has in surveys, and snap our fingers, mandatory harvest reporting is in place, and automatically the public is gonna love it and accept it, and we're gonna have better data. We're really looking at this as kind of just a first step to start exploring more ways to collect recreational data. And what we have right now, like the web form for people to report, likely 3-4 years from now won't be the same. Like, what we have 3 or 4 years from now won't be the same as what we have now, just because we're kind of looking at this as a two-phased approach, and we're wanting to develop an actual, like, smartphone application that people will report on, and we really want to be able to, with that application, include some things that are, like, not just useful for us, but also useful for the angling public, something that actually would incentivize them to use the app, like tide information, weather information. I know I myself have a couple of different smartphone applications on my phone that are like fishing logbooks, and
Right.
I think that would be a great thing to have in a smartphone application for mandatory reporting.
Well, let me ask you this. By the way, so far off of my YouTube channel where people are watching this, about 40% of the people watch it off of a phone. which I found interesting. The other 40% off of a laptop, and the other percentage off of a big desk job. Let me ask you this though: are there any other states that are doing this of reporting of caught species?
Not currently in the way that mandatory harvest reporting is being implemented. There's been some much smaller scale attempts at reporting, but the scale that mandatory harvest reporting in North Carolina is for the five species that anglers have to report are really some of the most popular recreational fisheries in the state of North Carolina. We're talking about over a million trips that actually interact with these species, and that level of scale hasn't been done, not to my knowledge anyway.
So North Carolina's doing the big belly flop into the deep end of the pool, and let's see what happens.
Well,
Somebody's
hopefully,
going to get wet.
hopefully it's not a belly flop. Hopefully it's a nice, pretty swan dive.
Right. And of course, and I do want to add, I see and hear a lot of guys get frustrated with things and they mumble and grumble and complain to each other, but they don't contact the division what the problem is. The other thing I wanted to ask is we've got five fish. Again, it's speckled and gray trout, drum, all species of flounder, and striped bass. Is there a potential for the reporting to expand into yet more species, say king mackerel, Spanish mackerel?
We don't currently have any plans to expand mandatory harvest reporting, at least not right now. I could see the potential for other species to be added in if it's something that works well, or if we, kind of to the same point I was making, that this is kind of just like a stepping stone to better recreational data collection. There is always the potential for other recreational data collection programs to include more species. And one of the things that is really interesting to me anyway about mandatory harvest reporting is the five species that were chosen are really some of the species that are MRIP does a relatively good job of capturing the data for these species. Like because spotted sea trout or speckled trout are one of the most frequently targeted recreational fish in North Carolina, we interact with a lot of anglers that harvest them. Like our the confidence that we have in our spotted sea trout estimates from MRIP are relatively high. The PSEs on them are good. We're relatively confident with with other species, like where MRIP really kind of struggles is with what we call rare event species, species that uh like they have a very very short season or a short window where they're in the area for them to catch. Cobia is a good example of something that MRIP, historically hasn't captured very very well. So I could see in the future a reporting program for a species that's a rare event species like that.
Another thought that came to mind now, if you have a license as a recreational fisherman, and you have a license, you got to report. Now, we have a variety of recreational licenses, the most popular being the 10-day license. Now, are those folks, the 10-day license holders, going to have to report? And what about piers where there's a blanket license or a charter boat where there's a blanket license? Do those folks have to report their catch?
Yes, sir. Yep. The basically everybody that harvests any of those five species, regardless of what kind of recreational license they have, or if they even don't have a license, they must report that harvest. And it's a really interesting point because we have somewhere around 500,000, I believe, or maybe up to 800,000, depending on the year, recreational licenses sold in North Carolina. But if you actually look at the numbers, we have well over a million anglers that fish in North Carolina. Exactly like you said, if they're fishing on a charter boat that has a blanket license, they're not required to have a recreational license. If they're fishing on a pier, they're not required to have a recreational fishing license. And a lot of those people that come down from maybe out of state or somewhere to fish our coast, if they're fishing on a pier, they don't have to get a license to do that. And it's a really big struggle for us to actually educate those people about this requirement, about any of our requirements in general. So we're really hoping to do a big kind of education and outreach push for mandatory harvest reporting this year before the requirement goes into effect. And we're planning to have on the piers, assuming that the piers will allow it, and I feel certain, I have hope that they will, uh, us to have signs up at the pier with a QR code where people can just scan the QR code and go straight to the reporting form. And that way, it's as easy as possible for anglers who might not be super avid anglers just coming down from out of town.
So I want to be perfectly clear for everybody, whether you're fishing at Jeanette's Pier, Kitty Hawk, Johnny Mercer's Pier down in the Cape Fear region, Bogue Inlet Pier, Oceana Pier in the Bogue Banks area, if you catch a flounder, you got to report it. I didn't buy a license that you're under the blanket license, you got to report it, correct?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. And the legislation really is kind of what spells that out. It actually does say that this isn't the exact phrasing, but the onus of reporting is on the individual angler. So if you're going out with a charter captain and you harvest any of these five species, you are the one that's required to report as that angler, not your captain. Now
That,
that's not to
that's
say
a
the
really good.
captain.
I'm going to jump in there. That's a really good point. And I'm going to pick on Captain Joe Shute because I've known him for 40 years, and I pick on him and he picks on me. So if I'm out with Captain Joe Shute under his license that I catch a flounder or a speckled trout, Joe Shute's not responsible for me reporting. I'm responsible for reporting that catch.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. If you harvested that flounder and kept it and didn't report it, the $35 fine, if this was after December 2027, the $35 fine, the infraction would go towards you and not towards Captain Joe.
Believe it or not, I've heard somebody say, "Well, I'm not going to get a license. I'm not going to report." Well, you're illegal. You don't have a license. So, what else can you? I think I've covered pretty much what I wanted to get out today. Is there any other message outside of it's happening this year that you would like to get out to the general public?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I would like to get out to the general public. The first is just a little bit of information about where they can go to access information about mandatory harvest reporting. We have a web page or kind of a series of web pages devoted to it on the Division of Marine Fisheries website. It's if you go to deq.nc.gov/harvest-reporting, that will take you to that web page. And there's links on that to the actual reporting form. Even though the requirement isn't in place yet, we actually have the reporting form live for the public. So if you are someone who wants to go in there and go ahead and kind of get used to what it's like to report your harvest before it's required, um, you can do that currently.
I want to stop you there. I think that's great. So right now you can do it. You
Yes,
can
sir.
go on. I caught five fish of that and three fish of that. You can go on and do it. And there's no. I think sometimes people are afraid, since it is government, of Big Brother. Is there a Big Brother aspect to this? Are they going to say, "Oh, we're watching you. We see you're catching these fish"?
No, sir. There's no big brother. I mean, I understand that worry. I don't like people looking over my shoulder at things either. So I get that. And in fact, we actually, when our IT folks were developing this smartphone or this web form, they initially had it because you have the ability with it to basically, because if you're filling it out on your phone, it can record your location. Like it could
Like
have
a
a map up
GPS,
there, and rather than you having to select which water body you were in, it could just record it for you.
right?
And we were very adamant that like, hey, we don't want this. We don't want this. We're not trying to collect people's location or anything. We're very much not trying to be Big Brother looking over your shoulder.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That so the Division of Marine Fisheries is not recording via GPS coordinates or what have you exactly where you are. You have to tell them the body of water you're in. Like I'm in Bogue Sound.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
All right. So, and again, particularly, well, like speckled trout's another good example. During the wintertime, they're in very specific areas up in the heads ends of creeks. So those again, it's not going to be. It's the third dock from the left. You're not getting that information.
No, sir, not at all. And if anglers go to the Division of Marine Fisheries website, like I say, there's a map where they can see it's broad water bodies that we're looking for. It's not specific creeks or anything like that.
I will make sure to get all the web links up. And while we're talking, when we go into the edit mode, I'll put these maps and graphs and whatnot on top of us.
All right,
Jesse,
awesome.
thanks a lot for talking with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Bill. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed this segment that we did with Jesse Bizet with the North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission. It is going to be law in 2025. Everything that we talked about. Love to hear from you. Post here at YouTube or email me, billhitchcock@mail.com, billhitchcock@mail.com. Love to hear your comments, questions, suggestions, whatever. Suggestions, by the way, such as what type of segments would you like for us to do? Who would you like for us to interview? We're always interested in things like that. And also, don't forget to like and describe, listen to me, subscribe, the buttons underneath here at YouTube. I'm Bill Hitchcock. Until next time, see ya.
Post your questions, comments, and concerns here on YouTube or email them directly to Bill Hitchcock at this address.